Thank you so much for having me and being able to talk about this amazing organization called TechBridge Girls. We were founded almost 24 years ago because we understood that STEM education was not working for Black and Brown girls. And in our earlier years, we were providing after school programming in schools in DC, Oakland, California, Seattle, Washington area. But what we learned in that process was our girls are ready, willing, and capable to lead into this STEM innovation generation. And what is often the challenge is the adults who have the ability to influence their persistence in their STEM journey. So for TechBridge Girls, our mission is to re-engineer STEM education that celebrates, centers, and creates a sense of belonging for Black and Brown girls across the country. And we do that by equipping educators with curriculum and training that is equitable, responsive, and relevant to the identities and backgrounds of the girls in which we serve. What we've learned in our 20-year history is that we have to center the girl in order for her to see herself in this future of STEM, right? And so what we have created around our curriculum is what we call our equity framework. And our equity framework is based on really three pillars: being STEM, using STEM, and doing STEM. So being STEM is about reimagining, but also reaffirming the women and people of color who have already blazed a trail within STEM. So we don't center the traditional our Einsteins or the Mark Zuckerbergs, right? We really talk about Gladys West, right? That we would literally be lost without her. We couldn't get anywhere from the grocery store to our favorite concert to a friend's house without that GPS technology. And we need to recognize that our girls don't need to be invited to a place that their lineage, their foremothers and aunties have already blazed a trail for. So that's the first thing, is being STEM is about beyond just the representation, but being able to show our girls that their identities are actually represented and have been leading in this field for generations. Using STEM is really the application of STEM education. So it's the rigorous learning of STEM education, but then done in a relevant way through hands-on experiences. So it's not only giving our girls the opportunity to tinker, but it's also giving them relevance of how STEM shows up in their everyday lives. I think so often we make STEM education feel like it's that thing over there, whereas actually it's our everyday existence. And so how do we make it relevant so that our girls understand it's part of their lives, and we want them to be able to drive and dictate how it is part of their future. And then the last aspect of our framework is using STEM, right? Using STEM for the greater good. We know that girls really want to have purpose-driven lives that allow them to change the possibilities of what a future could look like. They want to change the world. It is the capes that we put on in elementary school. And unfortunately, as we get older, those capes get a little bit shorter and then ultimately disappear, not because the girls don't have that starting belief, but it's from the society and the social constructs that create it. So for us, using STEM is about translating the power of these disciplines in the ability to change the world and change their communities and change the future that they want to see themselves thrive in. So that framework is fundamental, but the through line is really about how do we activate educators, especially in the out of school time space, to really advance those principles within the framework. And belonging is the thread. If our girls don't have a sense of who they are in their full authentic selves, with the agency that they need to continue to navigate in this field, then those pillars just become words on paper. but it's the educator or the environment that we're creating in that sense of belonging, addressing the social emotional development of girls, being responsive to the caregiving duties or the safety issues that girls from a gender perspective have to navigate, not like their male counterparts. It is about creating spaces in the visual view of I see myself in this amazing person who has blazed a trail in this field so that I can aspire. It is a powerful thing to support one girl at a time. We get to see it, we get to touch it. Education has always, I feel, in this 25-year or 24 years of our existence, has been this thing that it was a nice thing to have experience and exposure to. I think what is very clear in the last 5 to 10 years, especially during the COVID years, that technology is a necessary reality for our ability to thrive as humanity, right? In many ways. The distinction is, yeah, it'll be fun to be able to talk to FaceTime my friends who live on the other side of the country once in a while too. It is literally my business model to continue to ensure my business can thrive, right? So I think that's the biggest thing, is like the shift of like literally our dependency on this discipline that is so connected to the reality of how we have to live our life in our future, right? So I think that's the biggest shift.
When folks think about supporting TechBridge Girls, can you give us some perspective on how can every dollar contributed change STEM education? Because this really is about systems change. So how can each dollar donated change the system? And if possible, I think it would be powerful again to have an example. But just curious to hear your thoughts there.
Absolutely. Funding is the engine that allows us to advance the mission of our work. A great example of funding that has come to us as an organization, no matter if it's from an individual donor or a institutional funder that has committed to providing general operating grants, which have been revolutionary for this organization, because we started, as my leadership started when I came in the organization, we were serving about 700 girls across 3 cities. Now we're serving over 350 educators that reach over 14,000 Black and Brown girls across over 25 states. That is not only the investment in our programmatic scale, but that is also the investment in our infrastructure to have sustainable growth that will meet the needs and navigate the circumstances of our realities today. I think about funders who stepped up during COVID and really gave us the ability to still innovate and be creative, but also serve our students in their immediate need and be able to utilize those immediate needs as the precursor to being the program that we have the ability to scale the most right now, right? So that seed of letting us have the ability to continue to innovate, but also meet the needs, was fourfolded into now one of our most exciting and largest scaled program in the organization, our Ignite program. And so I think that one of the things that is important as funders engage in any organization, especially organizations like TechBridge Girls, especially when you've done the work for so long, we have the impact. We know that our girls are twice more likely than the national average to pursue STEM careers. They're engaging and enrolling in AP calculus at higher rates than the national average. We know that our educators are changing their pedagogy and behaviors and spaces so that our growth can thrive. When you understand we have the good product, right? What is the investment in the infrastructure to ensure that product can scale? And I think that is a really important insight that sometimes is missed by funders, because we understand you want to fund the thing, but there has to be some engine behind how you fund
Hmm.
the thing, like investment in the engine that has to advance the thing. I would say those are the areas of how to invest. TechBridge Girls utilizes Charity Navigator as our baseline focus of ensuring that our programmatic toward administration ratio stays aligned with best practices. We are extremely transparent with our donors and our funders. Like when we want or have a really great idea, or we're in a transitional period that we need more like administrative investments, we talk
Hmm.
about that and have very open conversations that will hopefully allow our funders continued confidence, but also be able to see the fruits of their labor when they see the fact that we've moved such the needle in such a short amount of time.
Yeah. And you touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'd love to dive a bit deeper. You mentioned how technology, especially now, moves faster than our consciousness. And I think it's a really powerful point. Can you dive a little deeper into that and why it makes it, to your mind, potentially, not to put words in your mouth, to your mind, why might that make it crucial for donors to act now rather than later because of that speed? Do you see those two things as interrelated?
Yes, I do see those two things interrelated, and I'll actually give a story about how I started my career. So I started my career, like people always laugh at me, but I was really part of a team that was bringing digital subscriber line, high speed internet as like a consumer product, right? So for folks of that age, we all remember dial up, and we were in the moment of the transition from dial up. And hindsight, thinking 20 plus years ago, we were in the midst of the digital divide without utilizing those actual words, but also not even conscious about what the power of this new innovation was going to do for some, but not for others.
Mm.
I think the conversations, when I think about the conversations in those rooms, it was the excitement about the possibility of what was unknown and that was being unlocked through this technology. And that excitement, like the opportunity and the possibilities outweighed everything else. So that really was the driver. And of course, there is a financial aspect, right? We live in a capitalistic world, so of course the financial aspect of that too was driven. I'd say that being part of that level of innovation, sometimes it's not even a conscious thing. If I didn't come from the work and my background and my where my degree was, I don't know if I wasn't in the room to say, like, how are communities that don't have our fiber optic lines going to be able to access this, right? It was just going like a steamboat, like at full speed ahead, that it's hard to get the consciousness because consciousness is like intentional, right? It takes
Hmm.
time, it forces you to pause, and you don't always have that time when innovation is moving fast, right? So, where
Yeah.
I think the connection with funding is as much as the world, the capitalistic world that we live in, is going to fuel that innovation and ensure that the investments in the tech and the resources are enabled to help that done. Where I see philanthropy playing a role is increasing the consciousness and investing in the consciousness so that
Mm.
the speed of both can move at the same rate. Because
Yeah.
normally, what I would assume is it's already taken off. How can we pull it back now? But if it was resourced at the same level of rigor, then what
Hmm.
can it actually move at the same speed? So I think that's where philanthropy can play a huge role. And that is
Yeah.
the research, the investment in research, the investment in thinking about evaluation and assessment, thinking about how to fund the development of social constructs and putting that as a lens and a step in the process that is critical, essential. It's where I think policy and things can also play a place. It's like, how are we making space for consciousness, but then how are we investing in consciousness so it can also move at the same speed of the innovation? TechBridge Girls, as we pivoted our model outside of the direct service or after school programming, we have less opportunities for folks to like volunteer in our programs. But what we have seen as really critical support is like when organizations bring their expertise. So
Mm,
when we're in the midst of exponential scale, how do we ensure that we have the right infrastructure and technology to support that scale, and that we have the right knowledge base and training for our staff to actually do it? You named Salesforce. That's a perfect example because we actually utilize Salesforce CRM technology, and we're always trying to figure out how can we utilize it better? How can we equip our staff to utilize it better? Are we utilizing it to optimizing our strategies and helping us make decisions? So
mhm,
being able to have that expertise in our to support our organization and our thinking is always really great. Marketing and PR and legal. I always say for nonprofits, those are luxury at sometimes, especially organizations at our size, luxury type of talent and resources for an organization. So being able to provide those type of skills and knowledge to an organization, for especially like us who is in this place of exponential growth and we're like getting ready. I think about us as like this slingshot moment, right? So
mm,
for the last 3 years, we've been pulled real tight. That tension has been us thinking more intentionally about our operations, being in this place of growth and scale, building out our team and our strategies. And now we're almost at that point of being let go to these new heights. And so having these resources and levels of knowledge in the organization to help support and navigate us is always really important. Being a connector, I think that oftentimes, especially organizations that are led by people of color, we don't always sit in the rooms and don't get invited to the rooms. And often donors, folks in philanthropy are in those rooms and in those conversations. So I always tell the team member the best thing that can happen to us is that we are in the room when we are not physically in the room, meaning somebody is advocating for us. Somebody is singing our praises. Somebody is saying, did you know about this organization? Somebody is following up to connect us to other
mhm.
opportunities to sustain our work and mission. So those are the areas I think bringing your talents to organizations like TechBridge Girls to help us support our area of growth and advancement of our mission, being a connector for the organization to open up new doors, and then also supporting our advocacy work. So as we continue to build out what we call our belonging blueprint, which is our advocacy framework to say we need better data, we need better resources and funding for our communities, and we need better environments and spaces where our girls feel like they belong. Be a part of that call to action and help us advance that message to larger places of influence for change.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining. Really love the conversation and good luck to you in all your work.
Thank you so much. Take care.